Hey guys, it's me Jacob again, and welcome to my blog, which is about programming, specifically web development with my preferred tech stack, which is Python, Docker, React, JavaScript, Ubuntu, AWS, uh, Nginx, Unicorn, that sort of stuff. In the last video, I watched my last video before this one to kind of try and give some continuity. I talked about refactoring my blog, which is a pretty simple blog. It basically serves static content, even though it's not static content. It's actually it gets the blog data through an XHR request, but it could be static content, and it would be probably faster if it was just pure static content. But anyways, it's a very simple thing. It's just like images and some JSON for each one of the blog articles, and yeah, that's more or less it. There's some other stuff too, but the refactoring was basically just moving from Flask to Fast API for the backend, and that was not too hard. That was pretty easy. A lot of the routes end up fairly similar. I think when I look through this, I have to be a little bit careful. I haven't shared. I plan on sharing a lot of my code that I write, but it has to be meticulously prepared so that there's nothing like any secret keys or anything that I just kind of leak out. So I have to redesign my code a little bit better to make it very simple and efficient to share in this type of setting. But as I'm looking through my code, one thing that Fast API does, which is really cool, is it does cores. That was a lot easier for me to get done with Fast API than with Flask, honestly, but that may just be because I was more experienced this time around. Besides that, there is one thing that's very different from Flask and Fast API, and that is that Fast API is running inside of an async IO event loop, right? So if there's something that you want to spawn, one of the reasons you use an async IO event loop is because you want to do other things while the program's going on that have almost nothing to do with the other, like, the best way to describe this is, say you wanted a program that would answer HTTP requests, but also would just print the word hello world every 10 seconds. And that was all it was doing. To have those two different loops going on, like conceptually, is very easy for a human to think about. You're just like, create this loop, make it print every 10 seconds, right? Do the other loop, that's an HTTP server. But you can't actually do that with something like Flask, because Flask is basically a single blocking request handler. So what happens is a request comes in from the browser, someone clicks on your thing, and then it goes to Flask eventually, and Flask spawns this, basically handles the request, and as the request goes through the code, it does each line, right? And each line resolves before it goes to the next line. And that's cool, but that means if you want to have it print hello world every 10 seconds, that's a while loop that never ends. And you can't do that because it just doesn't work that way. But what's cool with Fast API is that you actually can have it do that in the background all the time because everything is in a big event loop already. And so none of the different components like an HTTP request or this printing hello world block the none of them block the entire application indefinitely, unless you can actually tie yourself in that knot by using blocking code that never stops blocking. But anyways, so one thing that's different with the Fast API implementation is that on startup, it basically just loads all of the blog data from S3, all of the images from S3, and it just stores them in RAM. Of course, this strategy is very RAM intensive, and the more and more images I have and blogs I have, the more and more kind of like RAM heavy it gets. So there might be a drawback to this, but the good thing is it cuts down on my S3 requests by like an infinite factor, and it also speeds up the requests by a very fast factor, because instead of having to pull from S3 or even pull from disk, I just serve RAM to the request immediately. So those are one of the changes that I made. Let me look at another part of this code. The routes are all the same. Get article is set cookie, get image. There's not really a reason to set a cookie right now, but those are the different routes that exist here. And in those routes, everything looks more or less the same, except the response images are from Fast API. The responses are from Fast API, which is like a different object, the response object. Flask has its response object. Fast API has its response object, but they're very similar, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And besides that, there are really no notable differences. What about the DevOps element, such as, the Docker file? I'm going to pull this up and look at it for a second. So the Docker file looks completely the same as Flask all the way through, basically. There's nothing really notable about it either. So the Docker file is almost exactly the same. I imagine Nginx is basically almost exactly the same, because I'm not even using a WebSocket in my blog, actually. There's no reason to have a WebSocket there. So the Docker file was basically very similar. The Nginx.conf file is very similar. TLS certs didn't really change from when I was using Flask or anything like that. Just using Let's Encrypt and Ansible to acquire them. And the routes didn't really change. So yeah, all in all, very similar to what the Flask build was like. So what about the front end then? So the front end changed more drastically than the back end for sure. And this is because the first time I did the front end, I was learning a whole lot of things. I didn't really know how to really approach the problem. That said, it looks very similar to what it was before. I removed a couple of some of the navbar elements because they seemed unnecessary. But mostly I just cleaned up some of the code itself so that it made a lot more sense and was intuitive for the routing, because I was using the React router and I knew that I wanted to use it, and so I was like, I'm going to use it the right way. And so I added different classes for everything, and it's just organized in a better way. But functionally, it's very similar to the original one. And that's cool. I wasn't really looking to change the way the blog looked or operated all that much. I was just trying to get it refactored so that from a development point of view, it was cleaner and easier to maintain and append to in the future, or troubleshoot if I needed to. And so all in all, pretty simple refactor. And so for those of you that have maybe questions about the whole process, you can leave a question in the comment section, but I wouldn't be afraid of moving to Fast API. And yeah, so I guess not a whole lot of useful information there, but it's hard to describe exactly why a design is better in a refactoring, but Yeah. I mean, I think what I need to do, and I'll gauge this from the responses. So far, I basically get no responses on anything I post anywhere, uh, which is the way it is right now. Maybe it'll be that way for a while. But if there are responses and people would be interested in having a deeper look at the actual code, I'm going to be doing that for a future project. But for this one, it's not quite prepared for me to just show it. I have to make sure that it's all good. Um, but I'm sure I could prepare it and basically make it transparent and walk through some of it in more detail so that people that are interested can see the concrete examples. Um, but I guess the thing that I'll wrap up this video with is that I have pretty big plans. I have a very substantial development project in the works that I'm basically planning on making it completely open source and transparent. Although I'm not going to have a GitHub project or anything like that. I may eventually make a GitHub project, but I'm going to instead, I mean, I have my own Git projects, but they're private. But instead, I'm going to make it where you can download the source code if you need to or want to, in the form of like a compressed zip file from my website directly. Of course, this feature doesn't actually exist quite yet, and so the project itself, I'm going to go into it a lot more on this channel and on my blog. It is a chat project. It's a little bit different than some chat projects I think people may have done already. Not in the sense of its functionality is truly different, but more so in the sense of I was trying to solve a very specific distributed problem. And I'll probably have to go into more detail with that. I might not explain it super well here, but to just take a quick shot at it, basically what the problem is WebSockets. Basically, when you have one WebSocket, it's pretty straightforward, and you want to like share data in real time between two different clients, right? So I'm using the browser, you're using the browser, and I post a message and you receive the message, as well as maybe some other guy who's also in the chat, right? Like Discord or something. That works fine if all of us are connected to the same WebSocket, because that WebSocket can receive my update. It knows that I changed the data, and then it can also notify everyone else that's connected to it that it's been updated, right? So that's easy. But the problem is it can't scale any direction at all. Like if you have even two different WebSockets, like say I have two different sites that are both WebSocket servers. They're both Pi Harbor WebSocket or whatever, but they're on different servers, right? If you connect to one server, that WebSocket won't notify me because I'm connected to a different WebSocket server. So it's a pretty classic distributed problem where it's like it doesn't really work. And so what my project is solving is the fact that you can have a bunch of these different, what I call web edge servers, that allow pure clients or WebSockets, like in a browser, like you and me and the other guy, to connect to any of them while also receiving updates from any of them. And there's kind of like a little trick here, which is just having another WebSocket server behind all of the edge WebSocket servers that are like, it's all of the servers are connected to that. All of the clients are connected to the edge servers. And in this sense, that I call it a cluster manager. The cluster manager basically notifies all of the servers, and then all of the servers notify all of the like literal people or pure clients is what I call them. So anyways, it's a project that's very substantial that I'm putting a lot of time and energy into, and it's kind of like, it's a big step up. It's a challenge in terms of like technical skill required to actually execute it, but it's going to be cool. And like I said, I am doing it with the intent of releasing all of the code, blogging about all the code, and going into more detail about how the code, what it is, and how it works. And ultimately, the way that I see the projects that I'm going to be doing is they're a distributed, non-centralized solution that's pretty small scale, but like effective if different people just do them. So the idea is like you make a program or a system, right? And it works for you, but someone else could have it work for them in the exact same way, even though it's completely separate from you. Um, there isn't any like giant Facebooks or Amazon or anything like that. I'm not trying to make like a anything like that, because I think that that is much too centralized, and that I think that the people should have their own servers, and that they should have their own software, and that software can be standardized in sort of like a clone of other people's things, or like everyone's sharing the same program, but the people that are running the program have absolute control over it, right? And so it's kind of like that. So with the example I made with Discord before, instead of having all of your friends' chats all be centralized within Discord's control, your friends would have their own chat servers that people could come and show up to that control their data specifically and no other data. So anyways, I'm going to go more into that, and thanks for tuning in. This was a bit of a ramble. I don't really plan these very, very much, but I felt like I needed to post something because I just kind of had my head in the weeds doing a bunch of programming for a while, and so I figured I would keep you guys in the loop and let you know that I am not giving up. I'm going to keep doing blog articles. I just got to get to the right moment, and I'm going to keep releasing projects and giving updates for those projects. And if just to wrap it up, the project is going to be called Harbor Chat, and it's technically already on the internet, but it's very much so in a what you would call like temporary prototype mode. So I mean, so it's going to have a lot of bugs, but I'm the type of person who deploys stuff all the way into the internet, even if it's not like completely refined. So you can go there. You can go to harborchat.com and it's probably up. But yeah. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment below. Check out my blog, pieharbor.com. Check out my web app in development called Harbor Chat, which is going to be a chat app. And watch some more videos if you would like. Thanks for tuning in.